I would give up all my riches just to feel truly loved for once, Prince Larry whispered, standing alone on the rooftop of his father's palace. The wind was gentle, yet the weight in his heart was heavy. Beneath him the golden lights of Lagos sparkled, like stars fallen to earth. Cars zoomed, parties throbbed with music, and champagne flowed like water. His return from America was supposed to be a celebration, but deep inside, Larry felt like a ghost in his own body. He had everything money could buy: private jets, gold watches, fleets of cars, and servants who bowed whenever he passed. Yet he felt like a poor man. No one saw him, no one knew him, no one loved him. Why would a prince, the only son of one of Nigeria's wealthiest kings, want to pretend to be poor? What was he planning? And why was he staring at an old rusty bicycle hidden in the palace garage? This is what we are about to find out. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments section. Stay tuned, and don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Earlier that day, Prince Larry had walked into a party thrown just for him and walked out 15 minutes later. He watched the girls rush forward, not even pretending to care about who he was. They just wanted a photo, a ride, or a husband with a fat wallet. He watched the men salute, laugh at all his jokes, and whisper about his inheritance behind his back. No one asked how America had changed him. No one noticed the pain in his eyes. No one saw how deeply lonely he had become. "I want to disappear," Larry said quietly to his friend Jake. Jake blinked. Disappear? "I want to stop being Prince Larry for a while. I want to be nobody." Jake looked worried. "Bro, are you okay?" Larry nodded. "That's the problem. I'm okay outside, but I'm dying inside." Later that night, Larry and Jake sat in the restaurant Jake owned, a small, cozy place called City Bites, near Golden Hills University. "I'll work here," Larry said. Jake laughed. "Work? You mean like washing plates?" "Delivery boy," Larry replied, eyes serious. "Let me use that old bicycle you parked outside. Let me dress like a regular guy. Give me the worst deliveries, the furthest ones. I need to find someone who sees me, not my wallet." Jake paused. "You're serious?" Larry nodded. "Dead serious." Jake scratched his head. "Your dad will skin me alive." "He won't know," Larry said. "Nobody must know, not even the staff." And so the plan was born. The prince would become poor, not in riches but in appearance, not in spirit but in disguise. The next morning, Lagos woke up to its usual madness. Traffic horns, shouting Danford conductors, smells of puff-puff and petrol mixing in the air. But somewhere behind a restaurant kitchen, a prince, dressed in faded jeans, a simple brown shirt, and dusty sneakers, strapped a carton box of food to the back of an old squeaky bicycle. His name tag said Daniel. He wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled. He hadn't ridden a bicycle in years. His first delivery, Golden Hills Hostel, room 4B order. Jollof rice, chicken and maltina. Customer, Miss Antonia Benson. Larry pedaled through bumpy streets and arrived at the gate. The security guard didn't even look at him twice. In that moment, Larry felt invisible and strangely free. He knocked on room 4B. A loud voice answered, "Come in!" He stepped inside and froze. The room was like a palace. Shiny tiles, a big mirror, perfumes lined like trophies, and in the middle, sitting cross-legged on a velvet bed, was a girl dressed like a queen, tall, beautiful, gold earrings, long fake nails painted blood red. Antonia. She looked at him, then frowned. "What's that smell?" she said, waving her hand. Larry blinked. "Sorry, I was writing." "Don't talk near me," she snapped. "Put the food on the floor." Larry hesitated. "Did you bathe at all today?" Antonia added, wrinkling her nose. Larry smiled politely. "Here's your food, Ma." Antonia looked at him again and laughed. "You poor people smell like struggle," she said loudly. Her roommate giggled from behind the curtain. Larry's heart sank, but he said nothing. He bowed slightly, turned and walked away with his empty carton box. Outside, he sat on his bicycle and looked at his hands. So this is how they treat the poor. Jake entered the back of the restaurant and found Larry sitting alone, picking dirt from under his nails. "You okay?" Jake asked. Larry nodded slowly. "She looked at me like I was trash." Jake sighed. "You're not used to it, but now you see what it feels like." Larry looked up. "I needed to see it. Not with palace guards around me, not with everyone bowing. I needed to know." Jake brought him a bottle of water. "Tomorrow's another day, my prince." Larry smiled faintly. "Don't call me that. Second delivery. Golden Hills Hostel, room 2C. Order beans, plantain, and bottled water. Customer?" Grace Thomas. Larry pedaled again. His legs hurt, his back ached, but he reached the door and knocked. A soft voice answered. "Come in." He stepped inside. The room was simple, small, clean. Bible on the table, faded curtains. A small fan turned slowly. Grace sat by her study table. She turned, saw him, and smiled. "Oh, thank you so much. You're fast." Larry handed her the food. "You must be tired," Grace said. "Wait, let me get you cold water." Larry blinked. "You don't have to—" "No." "Wahala," she said, pouring from her fridge into a cup. "You guys work so hard. I always tell my roommate we should treat people better." Larry took the water, shocked. "Thank you." Grace smiled. "I'm Grace. You?" "Daniel," he said softly. She grinned. "Nice to meet you, Daniel." Larry walked back to the restaurant, his chest feeling warm. "She gave me water," he told Jake. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "A girl. Grace. She smiled at me, spoke to me like I matter." Jake leaned on the counter. "Careful, Larry." Larry nodded slowly. "That's why I'm doing this, to find someone like her." Jake shook his head. "Don't fall too fast." But Larry was already falling. That night, Grace sat on her bed, thinking about the kind delivery boy. "There was something about his eyes," she whispered. And somewhere else in the city, Prince Larry, dressed in old clothes and sleeping on the couch in Jake's apartment, stared at the ceiling, smiling. She didn't see a prince, he thought. She saw me. If she finds out who I really am, will she still love me? But neither of them knew what the future was about to bring. Antonia was watching, and the game of love, pride, and secrets had just begun. Larry sat on the edge of his mattress in Jake's small apartment, staring at his worn-out sneakers. He had delivered food all day, smiled at rude customers, dodged okadas, and sweated under the hot Lagos sun. But none of that tired him. Only one thing kept spinning in his heart. Grace. She was different. She looked him in the eye. She smiled like it was a gift. She made him feel human. But Larry was keeping a heavy secret, one that could break everything. He wasn't Daniel. He was Prince Larry, the son of a king, the man in every headline, the future ruler of an empire, and she had no idea. The next morning, Larry packed up 4 orders into his delivery box, strapped it to his bicycle, and began the long ride to Golden Hills University again. His legs burned. His shirt clung to his back. The bike chain kept making funny sounds, but none of that mattered. All he could think about was room 2C. When he arrived at her door, Grace was waiting. "Right on time," she smiled. Larry grinned. "Trying not to disappoint my best customer." She laughed, then offered him a small bottle of Fanta and a donut. "This is for you." Larry froze. "You bought this? For me?" "Yes, now," she said. "You always look so tired." "Don't worry, it's not poisoned." They both laughed. Her laughter was soft, pure. It reminded him of childhood, of before the palace, before the fake smiles. "Thanks, Grace. You're too kind." She shrugged. "My mum says kindness doesn't cost anything, but pride? That one is expensive." Larry nodded slowly. "Your mum is wise." Grace smiled. "Tell me about your family. What do they do?" Larry's heart skipped. Small business. My dad sells building materials in Festac." It wasn't a full lie. The king did own construction companies. "And your mum?" "She passed away a long time ago." Grace's smile faded. "Sorry." "It's okay," Larry replied softly. "She used to tell me that I'm not what I wear. I'm what I carry inside." Grace's eyes softened. She was right. They sat outside her door, sharing snacks, talking about life. Grace told him how her father lost his job and how her mum sold bread in the mornings. Larry told her about growing up with rules, guards, and cold silence. But he never mentioned the palace. Not yet. Down the hallway someone was watching through half-opened curtains. Antonia. She narrowed her eyes as Grace laughed with the dirty delivery boy. "What does she even see in that bicycle rat?" Antonia hissed to her friend Lisa. Lisa shrugged. "Maybe she likes the way he sweats." Antonia turned sharply. "She's embarrassing all of us, talking to commoners like they're her mates." Lisa giggled. "Relax now," Antonia frowned. "You'll see. I'll remind her of her place very soon." Jake was cleaning the restaurant kitchen when Larry walked in, whistling. "You look happy," Jake said. Larry grinned. "I had a good delivery." Jake raised an eyebrow. "That Grace girl again?" Larry nodded. Jake leaned on the counter. "You're falling, bro. Fast." Larry laughed. "I think I've already fallen." Jake sighed. "You still haven't told her who you are." Larry's smile faded. "I will. Just not yet. She's the first person who's liked me without knowing the crown. I don't want to ruin it." Jake looked him in the eye. "Secrets don't stay secrets forever." It rained heavily the next morning. Larry still delivered food. His shirt was soaked, his shoes squished when he walked. The old bicycle slipped twice, but he pushed on, determined. When he got to Golden Hills, Antonia was waiting near the gate. "Hey, you!" she shouted. "Delivery boy!" Larry turned. "You're late," she barked. "You people are always useless." Larry walked over, dripping with rain. "I'm sorry, the roads were flooded." Before he could finish, she poured cold water on him from a flower jug. The water splashed on his face, mixed with the rain. Everyone gasped. Grace came running from inside. "Antonia, what's wrong with you?" she shouted. "He's a nobody," Antonia sneered. "Just teaching him a lesson." Grace stood between Larry and Antonia. "He's not a nobody. He's more of a human being than you'll ever be." Antonia's eyes burned with rage. Larry stood quietly, water dripping from his eyelashes. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Grace grabbed Larry's hand. "Let's go." They walked in silence under the rain. Grace still held his hand. "You didn't have to defend me," Larry said softly. "I wanted to," Grace replied. "People like her think they're better just because they wear nice clothes, but character is what matters." Larry looked at her, eyes wet, not from rain but something deeper. "I've never met anyone like you," he whispered. Grace blushed. "Don't start." "I mean it." She smiled, then pointed. "There's a kiosk there. Let's wait for the rain to slow." They sat under a small zinc shed, cold and wet, but warm in heart. "I wish the world was like you," Larry said. Grace looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "I wish people looked deeper. Past the shoes, past the bicycle, past the name." She tilted her head. "Daniel, are you okay?" He nodded. "Yeah. I'm just tired of people pretending." Grace reached into her bag and pulled out a handkerchief. She wiped the rain from his face. He closed his eyes. Her touch was gentle. Back at the hostel, Antonia was fuming. She humiliated me in front of everybody. Lisa sat quietly. Anthony picked up her phone. I'm calling my mum. What will your mum do? Antonia's eyes glowed with wickedness. Just watch. Grace wants to act like a queen. Let's see how she handles a scandal. Grace was in her room reading when loud knocks shook her door. Who is it? She asked. Police! Open up! Her heart jumped. She opened the door slowly. 2 officers entered. Are you Grace Thomas? Yes. You're under arrest for making threats to Miss Antonia Benson. What? Please come with us. Her roommate screamed. What's going on? I didn't do anything, Grace cried. One officer said, we have a written report and witness. She was handcuffed. Larry got the news an hour later and ran straight to the police station. The cold floor, the smell of urine, the tears running down her face. Grace sat in the holding cell, hands on her lap. What did I do wrong? She whispered. She thought of Daniel. She thought of her mum. She thought of how unfair the world was. The guard shouted, Visitor! She looked up and saw Larry. Don't worry, Larry said through the bars. I'm going to fix this. How? Grace cried. They said Antonia's mum is a big woman. She knows everybody. Larry took a deep breath. It's time to make a call. To who? To the palace. Release her before the hour ends, or I'll come myself. The deep voice thundered through the speakerphone. Every officer in the station froze. The DPO's hands shook slightly as he held the phone to his ear. Your Highness? He stammered. Yes, came the reply. You arrested the wrong girl, and if she's not out within the hour, I will turn that station upside down. The call ended. 10 minutes later, the cell door creaked open. Grace looked up, weak and confused. You're free, the officer said. She blinked. What? Your case has been closed. You can go. Grace slowly stepped out, still shocked. She didn't know who made the call. She didn't know who had such power, but the officer bowed slightly as she walked past. Someone very important had just saved her. Grace returned to her hostel in silence. Her roommates rushed her with questions. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Rumors were flying all over the school. But all Grace could think about was Daniel. He wasn't there at the police station as a boy with a bicycle. He came like someone who had power. More than power. He came like someone with authority. Who are you really? She whispered to herself that night. Are you really just a delivery boy? Meanwhile, in the palace, Larry paced back and forth in the royal study. His father, King Edward, watched him quietly. You broke your cover, the king said. I had no choice, Larry replied. They were humiliating her, arresting her, and she didn't do anything wrong. You risked the mission. I didn't come back to be king. I came back to find love, and I think I've found it. The king leaned back. Then it's time you prepare. For what? To reveal the truth. Larry's heart raced. Back at City Bites, Jake was flipping suya on the grill when Larry returned. You look like a man who just jumped off a cliff, Jake said. Larry threw down his bag. She's free. Thank God, Jake said. But I know, Larry cut in. I broke the rules, but I couldn't let her suffer. Jake sighed. You're in deep now, man. Larry sat down. I think I want to tell her the truth. Jake raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Larry nodded. If she truly loves me, she'll understand. The next morning, a black SUV pulled up in front of Grace's hostel. 2 men in royal uniform stepped out and handed her a cream-coloured envelope sealed with a gold stamp. To Miss Grace Thomas, one said. You're invited to the Grand Royal Ball, hosted by Prince Larry, son of King Edward of Oak Hills." Grace's eyes widened. "Me?" "Yes, Ma. VIP guest." She stared at the envelope in shock. Students gathered around, whispering and gasping. Antonia, who was walking by, stopped dead in her tracks. "What? Her? Invited where?" Grace held the invitation tightly, still stunned. "Why would a prince invite me?" she whispered. That evening, Larry, still dressed in his delivery uniform, waited by the canteen where Grace often sat. She walked in, still holding the royal envelope. "You got it?" Larry smiled. "You knew about it?" Grace asked. He nodded. "I may have told a few people. You're special." She stared at him, unsure. "But why?" Larry reached into a paper bag and pulled out a folded gown. "This is for the ball." Grace gasped. "You bought me a dress?" "I know you couldn't afford one right now. I wanted you to feel like a queen." Grace touched the soft fabric with shaking fingers. "Daniel, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll go," Larry said. She looked at him with wide, searching eyes. "Who are you really?" Larry paused. "Someone who wants to see you smile." Golden Hills students lined the streets as royal cars zoomed past. Helicopters hovered, cameras flashed. The royal palace in Oak Hills was lit like daylight, with chandeliers, red carpets, and men in white agbadas. Security stood like statues. Grace stepped out of the car the palace sent for her, wearing the dress Daniel gave her. She looked breathtaking. The crowd turned. People gasped. Even the queen herself whispered, "Who is that girl?" Antonia stood near the punch table in a shimmering gown she borrowed from her mother. When she saw Grace, her eyes narrowed like knives. "She must be dreaming," Antonia muttered. "This is my level, not hers." A trumpet sounded. The host announced, "Please welcome His Royal Highness Prince Larry, son of His Majesty King Edward." Everyone clapped. Larry walked in, wearing a royal blue suit lined with gold. His crown glinted. His shoes sparkled. His face was calm, but his eyes scanned the crowd. And then he saw her. Grace. She froze. The room went silent. Their eyes locked. Her lips trembled. "Daniel?" Larry took the mic. "I have a confession to make." Whispers started. Phones came up. Cameras blinked. Larry looked straight at Grace. "My name is not Daniel. I'm Prince Larry. I came back from America not to show off riches, but to find something real. I met a girl, a kind, humble girl, who made me feel human again." Gasps filled the hall. He turned to her and smiled. "That girl is you, Grace." He walked over, knelt down, and opened a ring box. "I came to find love, and I found it. In your heart. Will you marry me?" The whole room held its breath. Grace's hands shook, her eyes filled with tears. But just before she could speak, Antonia's voice rang out like a curse. "No!" Everyone turned. Antonia stormed forward. "You can't marry her. She's a nobody. She lied too. She's after your money. She wants your title." Grace stepped back, her heart pounding. Larry stood up slowly. "Enough," he said, voice firm. But Antonia wasn't done. "You think she's clean?" she shouted. "Her father is a jobless loser. Her family can't even afford pure water." The room went quiet. Then Grace spoke. "And yet, I still treated Daniel with respect when he had nothing." The room erupted in gasps. Larry smiled. "And that's why I love her." But Antonia's eyes burned with evil, and she was not done yet. "If I can't have him, nobody will." Antonia's voice hissed through the back seat of her mother's car like a poisoned dagger. She clutched the torn hem of her party gown and threw her shoes to the floor. Her mother, Madame Dawson, a wealthy widow known for controlling politicians and police officers alike, lit a cigarette and exhaled slowly. "This is disgraceful," she muttered. "You allowed a church rat to steal your crown." Antonia's eyes burned red with fury. "He humiliated me, in front of everybody, all because of that cheap thing in a borrowed gown." Madame Dawson blew another cloud of smoke. "Then we remove her." Antonia turned sharply. "You mean?" "I mean it's time to remind that girl of where she belongs." The next morning, Madame Dawson made a call. She spoke only a few words. "I need Max." Back at the palace, Grace sat on a golden couch, still overwhelmed. She was now the woman everyone was talking about, the girl who stole the prince's heart. But in her heart, she was still the same girl from room 2C. Still unsure if this was all a dream. Larry held her hand gently. "You haven't answered me," he said with a nervous smile. Grace blinked. "Huh? My proposal. Will you marry me?" She looked into his eyes, warm, honest, beautiful. "Yes," she said. Larry leaned forward and kissed her forehead, but somewhere far away danger was already unfolding. Max was not a man people spoke to with jokes. He was tall, broad-chested, with deep scars across his arms, known in the underground world for being fast, ruthless, and loyal only to cash. He entered Madame Dawson's mansion quietly. She sat on a velvet chair sipping wine. Antonia stood beside her with folded arms. "Job?" Max asked. "Yes," Madame Dawson replied. "Name?" "Grace Thomas." Max raised an eyebrow. "The prince's girl," Antonia hissed. "She stole my life. I want her gone." Max didn't blink. "I don't do accidents. I do silence." "Do whatever," Madame Dawson said, sliding a brown envelope across the table. "Just make sure nobody ever sees her again." 2 days later, Grace stepped out of a bridal gown shop, laughing with palace guards. She had just picked her wedding dress. As she walked toward the car, a man in a hoodie passed by her and whispered, "Your life is in danger. Tell Prince Larry, Max is coming." Before she could turn, he disappeared. Grace stood frozen. Max? She entered the car, heart racing. When she reached the palace, she went straight to Larry. "Someone warned me," she said, trembling. "A man named Max is after me." Larry's smile vanished. He picked up the phone and made one call. "Send the royal guard. Now." That night, Max sat in his hideout, loading a gun. One of his boys entered. "Boss, I found something strange." "What?" "This Grace girl. She's Collins Thomas's daughter." Max froze. "Are you sure?" "Yes, boss. That man who saved your mother from dying in Ajagunli, that was Collins Thomas." Max dropped the gun. A memory flashed. His mother, bleeding, unconscious in the gutter, a stranger lifting her into his own car, driving her to the hospital, and paying every bill without asking for thanks. That stranger was Collins Thomas, Grace's father. Max sat down. "She's his daughter?" "Yes." Max stared at the floor. The money Madame Dawson gave him still untouched on the table. "She saved my mother's life," Max said softly. "Now it's my turn." The next day, Prince Larry received an envelope under his door. Inside were photos, audio recordings, and a note that said, She was meant to be gone by now. Her only crime was stealing your heart. The sender, Max. Larry studied the files. Photos of Madame Dawson and Antonia paying Max. Voice recordings of the plan to make Grace disappear, and even GPS maps of where they planned to take her. He called his father immediately. Within an hour, palace guards were dispatched. That evening, Madame Dawson was sipping tea in her parlour when 4 black SUVs pulled up. Royal guards stormed in. "You are under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy against the royal family," the lead guard announced. Antonia screamed, "What?" Madame Dawson laughed bitterly. "You must be joking." But then Larry walked in full royal robe, followed by Grace, and beside them, Max. Madame Dawson's face dropped. Max stepped forward. "You paid me to destroy a girl who once fed my mother when we had nothing," he said coldly. "You wanted her gone. Now you're the one who's finished." Antonia fell to her knees, wailing. Larry turned to her. "You poured water on me. You mocked me. You tried to destroy the woman I love. And yet she still showed you grace." He paused. "But now justice will speak." The news spread fast. Headlines read, "Prince's bride survives assassination attempt. Royal Guard arrests wealthy socializing daughter. Delivery boy turned prince marries true love." The people of Oak Hills celebrated. Market women danced. Drivers honked their horns. Even street kids shouted, "Grace for Queen! Grace for Queen!" Max disappeared quietly, but not forgotten. Later that week, a small ceremony was held. Larry personally handed Max a document, a house in Surrey, and a business permit, "Thank you." Max said nothing, just nodded once, then walked away. Some heroes don't wear crowns. The palace gates opened. The day had come. Grace walked down the aisle in her royal white gown. Flowers fell from above. Trumpets played. Prince Larry waited at the end, eyes glowing with tears. He reached for her hand. "You're not just my queen," he whispered. "You're my miracle." And in the crowd, Antony and her mother sat in chains, watching the love they tried to destroy bloom into something eternal. But even as the couple exchanged vows, a mysterious figure watched from the shadows, writing in a little black book, "One more test before the crown sits." Who was this man? And why was he watching? The priest's voice echoed through the royal hall as cheers broke out across the palace grounds. Prince Larry and Grace were officially married. Flowers flew into the air, bells rang, 1,000 guests clapped, and across Nigeria people watched live on TV and social media, celebrating the love story of a lifetime. A prince who found love disguised as a poor delivery boy. But behind one of the grand curtains, a man in dark glasses held a small black notebook. He didn't clap. He didn't smile. He simply closed the book and whispered to himself, "Time to finish what Antonia started." After the royal wedding, Prince Larry and Grace were moved to a private royal villa for their honeymoon week. The house was beautiful. Glass walls, indoor waterfall, warm lights, and peace like they had never known. But peace is a dangerous thing when enemies are planning in silence. 2 days into the honeymoon, King Edward summoned his head of security. "Have all the palace staff been screened?" the king asked. "Yes, your majesty," the man replied. But someone had slipped through. A new cleaner. Quiet, always on time, never speaking unless spoken to. He wasn't a cleaner. He was Demeji, the younger brother of Madame Dawson, a trained saboteur and former political thug, and he had come with one mission: make Prince Larry look like a criminal. Back at the villa, Grace sat on the balcony, watching the moonlight. Larry joined her with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. She smiled. "This is perfect." Larry sipped. You've made me forget all the pain of the past. Grace turned to him. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really come back from America? Larry looked at her. I was empty. Fame, money, cars, none of it made sense anymore. I wanted to feel something real. Grace nodded. And now? I feel like I'm finally home. They kissed under the stars, but miles away. Demiji was opening a locked drawer inside the palace security room. Inside it, confidential palace documents, royal checks, and the seal of the king. He smiled. It's time. The next morning, news broke. Prince Larry caught in financial scandal. Royal funds missing. Suspect claims innocence. Was it all a lie? Social media exploded. Bloggers posted screenshots of fake money transfers, stamped documents and voice notes that sounded like Larry's voice ordering the funds to be moved. Grace's phone buzzed non-stop. She stared at the screen. What is this? Larry's face dropped. Jake called. Bro, what's going on? They're saying you stole N500 million from the royal treasury. Larry stood up. Oh, I didn't. I've never touched royal funds without Dad's permission. But the media didn't wait for facts. People began calling him a fraud, saying Grace was part of the scam, calling the marriage a distraction. Back at the palace, King Edward was furious. You broke my trust, he shouted. Larry stood firm. Father, I swear, I didn't do this. The king threw down the fake evidence. Then how did your voice end up on this recording? I don't know. Guards entered. The king sighed deeply. Until we find out the truth, you are to be kept under palace arrest, and Grace must return to her family. Larry gasped. No. Grace, in tears, held his hand. I'm not leaving you. The king's eyes softened. This isn't punishment, Grace. It's protection. As Larry was led away, he shouted, Find Jake! He's the only one who knows everything! Back at her parents' house, Grace couldn't eat or sleep. She stared at every screenshot, every tweet, every video. This is all fake, she said. Someone is behind this. Her father walked in quietly. Sometimes, when the wind is too strong, you must bend to survive. Grace shook her head. No, not this time. I'm not bending. I'm fighting. She left the house that night and went to Jake's restaurant, but it was closed. She banged on the door. Jake opened, surprised. Grace, we need to find the truth, she said. Now. Jake pulled her into the back room and showed her something that made her heart stop. I installed a secret CCTV camera in the palace the day Larry moved in, just in case something funny happened, Jake said. He clicked play, and on the screen they saw it. Demiji, dressed in cleaner's uniform, sneaking into the palace security room at midnight, breaking the lock, copying documents, speaking softly into a recorder, using Larry's voice from old speeches, stitching it together to fake the order. Grace covered her mouth. This is it, she said. Jake nodded. We need to take this to the king. That night, Grace entered the palace with Jake and demanded to see the king. The guards refused, until Queen Ada, Larry's mother, appeared and allowed them in. Inside the royal court, Grace stood tall. Your Majesty, I know who framed your son. The king frowned. Jake handed him a flash drive. They watched the footage in silence. When it ended, the king stood up slowly. Find him! Now! Guards stormed the palace. Within minutes, Demiji was caught trying to burn papers in the basement. He was dragged before the king. Who sent you? The king roared. Demiji smirked. Your son was going to ruin the future of my family. You mean your greedy sister and her spoiled daughter? The queen snapped. Demiji laughed. This isn't over. The king slammed his staff. For you it is. The next morning a press conference was held. The king addressed the nation. My son, Prince Larry, was wrongly accused. The true criminal has been caught. The evidence is clear. I owe my daughter-in-law and her friend Jake my deepest apology." Cheers rang across the kingdom. Larry was brought out. He hugged Grace tightly. The king turned to the people. "And now I declare that Prince Larry and Queen Grace will begin their royal duties immediately. For in their honesty we have seen hope. In their love we have seen light." The crowd roared, but as the drums rolled and the skies danced, a letter slipped under the palace gate. Written in black ink, "The final test is near. The kingdom is watching. If your crown means more than your conscience, you don't deserve either." The letter shook in Grace's hand. She read it again and again. "The final test is near. The kingdom is watching." Prince Larry stood beside her, dressed in his full royal robe, ready to begin his first duty as the next king, but her eyes stayed glued to the warning. Jake was the first to speak. "Do you think it's from Daimoji?" "No," Larry said, eyes narrowing. "Daimoji is in the palace prison. Someone else is behind this." Queen Ada walked in. "You both need to be careful. This palace has seen many betrayals. Not everyone smiles with a clean heart." Later that night, while the palace prepared for Larry's public coronation, a strange man in a black suit entered the city. He carried no phone, no ID, only a name: Pastor Benji. But he was not there to preach. He had come with a secret no one was ready to hear. The next morning, just hours before the coronation, Pastor Benji walked into the palace gate without being stopped. He walked like he belonged. He spoke like he carried answers. And when he reached the main hall, the guards moved aside without question. Grace noticed him first. "Do I know you?" she asked. Pastor Benji looked into her eyes and said, "No, my queen." "But I knew your father before he became Mr. Collins." Larry turned sharply. "What do you mean?" The pastor smiled sadly. "It's time you both knew the full story before you wear the crown." Inside a private room, Pastor Benji sat with Larry, Grace, the king, queen, and Jake. "I was a young man," the pastor began, "when your father, King Edward, fell in love with a woman who was already promised to someone else. My sister." The king looked down. "Benji." "No need to deny it," Pastor Benji said calmly. "She left you, heartbroken. You became obsessed with replacing her." He turned to Grace. "You started secretly searching for her daughter, to bring her into the palace, not out of love, but to ease guilt." Grace's heart pounded. "What are you saying?" The king nodded slowly. "I didn't know you'd fall in love with her, Larry. I only placed her at Golden Hills through my old connections. I paid for her to be admitted, made sure she lived in that hostel. I knew she was good, kind, and I prayed you'd notice her." Larry stood in shock. "You manipulated everything," he whispered, "even how we met?" "I didn't tell you who to love," the king replied. "I just brought her closer, and you chose her." Gray's eyes were wet with tears. "So all of this was planned?" Pastor Benji added. "Planned by a guilty king, but love can't be forced, and the truth must be told before a crown can be worn." Larry stood outside the throne room staring at the royal scepter. He remembered riding the bicycle, sleeping on Jake's couch, eating puff-puff on the street with Grace, feeling human. He thought about everything: the disguise, the lies, the setup, the rescue, the marriage, and now, the truth. He turned to Grace. "I'll step down," he said. Grace gasped. "What?" "I can't wear a crown that came from lies. Even if the love is real, the path was twisted. I'd rather be Daniel than a dishonest king." Grace held his hand. "But you didn't plan it." Larry nodded. "But I've walked in it." Word spread fast. Prince Larry may step down before coronation. Shocking family secrets revealed before crown ceremony. Queen Grace defends husband amid palace drama. Public opinion split in two. Some shouted, "He's a true man, let him rule." Others whispered, "If it was planned, is it love?" That evening, Larry walked to the exact spot he once parked his rusty bicycle, behind City Bites. He stood there, in simple clothes, no crown, no security, just Daniel. A crowd gathered. Some remembered him as the smiling delivery boy. One woman said, "Now that same guy we day deliver beans to my daughter." A street boy added, "He gave me free bread one time when I was hungry." Larry raised his hand. "I came to find love. I found it in your streets, in your hostels, in your kindness." He turned to Grace, who stood beside him. "She never asked me for money. She gave me water, not questions. She gave me laughter, not judgment. She gave me herself." The crowd clapped. "And I," Larry added, "I lied, not to hurt anyone, but to protect my heart. If you want a perfect king, I'm not him. But if you want a real one, I'm ready to serve." A moment passed. Then a market woman walked forward. She hugged him tightly. "You're our son," she said. "Crown or no crown, we know your heart." Tears filled his eyes. The crowd began to chant, "King Daniel, King Daniel." He smiled. "My name is Larry, but Daniel will always be my truth." 2 days later, the palace was filled again. This time, it was not just for a wedding. It was a new beginning. Trumpets echoed, drums rolled, the crown was lifted, and for the first time King Edward stepped aside. The old king placed the crown on his son's head and stepped back. Grace stood beside Larry, now Queen Grace. Together they faced the people, not as perfect rulers, but as real ones. In a small cell under the palace, Madame Dawson and Antonia sat in silence. A guard arrived with a letter. Antonia opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note. "I forgive you, and I hope you find peace. Grace." Antonia broke down in tears. Even in her lowest place, Grace had shown her something money never could: mercy. That evening, Larry brought out an old bicycle. Grace laughed. "You kept it?" "I fixed it," he grinned. They rode through Oak Hills, laughing like kids. No guards, no fans, no camera flashes. Just two hearts, one love, and a story that would be told for generations. Because in the end, it wasn't the crown that made him a king. It was the heart that chose love over pride, truth over lies, and mercy over revenge.